Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Fronteras, A Changing America. I'm Casey Counts. In New Mexico, the rate of gun deaths increased 76% from 2013 to 2022, according to everystate.org. The increase nationwide was 36%. In an average year in the state, 507 people die and 821 are wounded by guns. Victoria L. Sanchez lost her son, Cody, in a tragic shooting in 2020. He was 23 years old. Victoria joins us to talk about how she moved forward in her grief and how she helps others do the same. Thank you so much for joining us, Victoria.
Thank you.
And I think it's worth noting that your son, Cody, travels everywhere with you.
Yes, he does. He's here with me today.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about your role as a trauma-informed advocate. What does trauma-informed advocacy mean?
So when we go through grief and trauma, especially as a mother, because we carried our children in our womb, it causes heartbreak, your heartstrings break, and most times it causes your neural pathways in your brain to become disconnected. So I help people to work through that. I advocate for them. I get them the right contacts they need. I put them in touch with other neuro coaches I know, give them different tools, and I advocate for them on their behalf. If they need like gun violence, I would connect them with people who are involved in that. If they have to go to the legislature or do anything like that, I put them in contact with them.
When you lost your son, Cody, certainly trauma had already been ever present in your life. In New Mexico, over 21% of children from birth to 17 experience some type of trauma, or what we might call adverse childhood experience, or ACE. How does that trauma that comes with you into adulthood inform how you help others?
What I've learned from my trauma is to reach out and get help. Get the right help so you don't carry that forward. And if you are carrying that forward, like myself, I brought childhood trauma into everything I did in my life. And I had to learn neurolinguistic programming. I had to learn self-care. I had to learn a lot of different modalities to help myself. Mindset, somatic breathing. You know, your breath it's the breath of life. And if you're not breathing right, that dysregulates your whole system. I trained in psychology and neuroscience and patterns and behavioral, abnormalities. And so I've done a lot of work in that so that I am whole now. I think that that's the whole thing, is to become a whole person, mind, body, and spirit. And when you get to that point and your spirituality is on point, that's your heart. And when your heart is pure, you go through life with gratitude and appreciation. And I think that breaks those chains when you learn that.
I don't imagine any type of trauma can really compare to losing a child.
Right.
How did that particular experience change how you moved forward?
It changed everything about me. It changed my mindset, the people I could be around. I noticed everything that everybody said. I became hypersensitive. The way people spoke, their lack of compassion, their lack of empathy. Sometimes they just are not knowledgeable. And in all of that, I've learned how to speak to grieving mothers, especially, to read their energy, to feel their heart. And it's put me in a place where I have so much empathy and care for people now, but I also have boundaries. And I never had that before. So I think that's been a big learning curve for me.
Tell me about when you decided to go on your One Mom's Memorial Ride.
Okay, so I was home, and my ex, he was always on the road. I didn't have anybody to really help me do anything at home with my heart, talking to me, lifting me up. And so I rode horses growing up. I was a professional rider. And I came across an ATV. My neighbor was selling her ATV, and I said, that is going to be my electric horse. I don't have horses anymore. I don't want to be around people. They hurt me every time they talk to me. It was like amplifiers when people would talk. Not meaning to say anything mean, but just, it was overwhelming, and I just had to get away from everybody and go find who I was. So riding that ATV, I rode to Tomei Hill, where my son and I used to go walk that every year for Good Friday. So I had a closeness to him there. And when I would ride up on the hill, I would sit in the sand, and I always went barefoot. And I learned that that was grounding. I never knew that that was grounding. And I would look out over our beautiful valley and the green grass and the fields. I didn't have to hear anybody speaking to me, changing my thought process, making me feel different about my grief. I processed it myself, and I sat there in the sand, and I would look up at God and just talk to Cody. And I learned to talk to myself with compassion, and I prayed over everybody in the valley. It was at COVID. So at that time, everybody was being isolated. So it was a perfect scenario for me. And I knew there was so many people losing their life. So I prayed. I prayed a lot, and that helped me.
And you ended up doing 12,000 miles or so.
Over 12,000 miles on my ATV. In my truck, 45,000 miles. I went across the United States.
At what point did you start sharing that experience with everyone on the internet?
I don't know. I went up there and I started taking pictures of the valley and how pretty it was. And I got a little holder for my phone, and I would just take video as I was traveling along. I didn't want to, like I said, I didn't want to talk to anybody. But when I got home, I got to watch those videos and re-experience where I was going and the things I saw, because I was in such shock. I didn't even realize I was doing it. Had I not done those videos and pictures, I would have never had that. And then I learned how to put them online, and I just started sharing them. And sometimes I would cry into the phone. Sometimes I would tell my experiences, but I didn't have to hear what anybody told me back. That was the key.
But you did hear from a lot of people as a result.
Eventually.
Can you recall what those initial contacts were like? People who reached out to you, who were they, and why were they reaching out?
Yeah, there was moms in the middle of the night, because moms seem to have a lot of trouble sleeping when their children die. And in the middle of the night, I was one of them, stay up all night long and watch videos. And that started coming across, and moms would reach out and say it was so inspiring. They couldn't get out of their bedrooms, they couldn't take a shower, and it inspired them. They told me how much watching my videos made them feel like they weren't alone. And they appreciated it, so I kept doing it.
I want to hear a little bit about Cody. Tell us about what he was like.
Oh my God. Cody, he was the cutest kid ever. He was just so full of life. I say he was my little clone. I homeschooled him his entire school. I taught him how to shoot. I taught him how to ride a horse. I taught him how to drive a car. I did everything with him, and we just had the best relationship. He was so kind and loving, and You know, he always, if I cooked a certain way, he was my taste tester. So we had that thing going on. Then he would go and cut apples in a certain, like a duck shape, and bring them to me. He was just so kind all the time. And he had a winning spirit because he liked to shoot and win.
You brought with you his medal.
One of his medals. He was a 5-time national shooting champion. He won the NRA, the American Legion, CMP, USA Shooting, and 4-H. So he was a 5-time national shooting champion, Olympic hopeful, and we traveled all over. And we listened to a lot of motivational speakers. And sometimes he was like, Mom, are we always, everything is teachable? I have to be learning every moment? I said, every moment's a teaching moment. And he said, you know what? You taught me so many goals, so many values, like how to be a wholesome person. And I got to hear him say that before he left me.
And so I think one of the things that is so striking about the situation is his training and his background, and that ultimately he too became a victim of a tragic shooting.
Yeah.
And you know, what would you say, having gone through that very specific training yourself with your son, is there anything that you would offer in terms of advice, prevention, advocacy, what you would hope to see in the future in terms of preventing happenings like this?
Yeah, he was trained on the range. I never took him to shoot an animal. We never ever practiced, did anything off the range. So when he moved out 2 years prior, he wanted to continue shooting, but he wasn't on the range with me anymore, so he would go out with his friends duck hunting and, you know, shooting and stuff like that. I did not like it. I really didn't, and I told him I didn't think that that's where he should be shooting. And they would go where there was makeshift shooting ranges out in the mesa. I guess a lot of people would shoot out there, and they would shoot. It was unsupervised, and I don't care if he was 23 years old. I think that you need a supervisor around, someone that knows gun safety. I don't think that you need to have alcohol around. Granted, my son's autopsy did not show any alcohol in his body, but there were a picture of him shooting, I think, a can of beer out of his hand, which I just thought, wow, with all the training that you've had, why would you do something like that? But the crowd of people he was around were drinking. I think they were very irresponsible. And I think that to prevent that, I think that people should have to get a psychological test every single year if they're going to be shooting guns. I don't think that this free range shooting should happen. If people are going to go and shoot animals, and that's what they do to provide for their family, and they have to have a license to do it, then that's how they're doing it. But have gun range safety in hand. Don't go out shooting by yourself. Make sure you're wearing proper attire, all the things they teach you. But definitely, I think that people need to have a mental evaluation and be clinically sound. I think that it should happen every single year, because trauma can happen today and psychologically mess me up, and I still own a gun at my house, and nobody's checking me, nobody's testing me. Like, it can happen to anybody.
It's obviously a conversation that goes on and on and on across our country. Recently, you received an award, National Parent of the Year for 2025 from Universal Peace Foundation. Universal Peace Foundation is described as a non-governmental organization that is in general consultative status with the United Nations, their Economic and Social Council. So tell me about being part of that group and how you found it.
Well, I have been very blessed from my story and all the constant learning that I've done. I've gotten involved with Easy Way TV in Hollywood. Dr. Eric Zuley, and Dr. Dante Sears also has Wealth XO, and they are both Universal Peace Ambassadors. and Who's Who, and they saw my story. They never have given up on me. They've encouraged me, and they nominated me. And I talked to Eric and I said, but my son died, and he goes, it's everything that you've done after. He said, you have become a mom to the world. And they nominated me, and I got the award. So he went with me there too.
Let's talk a little bit about becoming an author and a podcaster and an influencer. At what point did you decide to do those things?
Immediately when Cody died, I felt like I was just smothered. And I knew that his life was taken unjustly. And I wanted to make sure that I got justice through writing a book, because what was happening in the court system did not bring me justice. It was listed as an accidental shooting. And I don't believe that was the case. So I said, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to go on a journey. I'm going to tell people what happened, and they can take it from there. And so I was just exploding, ready to write stuff. And I had an attorney, and she says, you might want to be careful what you write just yet, because you're in your grief state. So I wrote a book on healing, and I talk about Cody in the book. But it got a lot out of me. And writing connects your neural pathways. And I studied quantum physics. So I started seeing that writing was helping me. So I wrote it all out. I got the book done in a weekend. And it was just literally over things that I've done, modalities that I've learned, and kind of a little bit of stories in between. And then there's a 30-day challenge in there, a self-care challenge at the end, which helped me. So I thought it was beneficial for everybody.
That was your first book, right?
This is the first one. I wrote, co-authored Pray Don't Panic, where a lot of women got together and talked about their stories and how praying helped them. And my big book is my tell-all, is in the works, and that one will have a lot of details.
How about podcasting? Tell us about what you do and who you communicate with and what messages you're sharing.
So I'm very, very fortunate there, because of the level of people that I've been around that have helped me author, that have helped me podcast, and they've paved the road for me. I have been able to talk to people like Carol Register. She's on Fox News, CBS. She's got a show. She's a neuro coach. And she also does a book club every Friday, which is called the Worthy Book Club. And we get in there and we talk about neuroscience, about the heart-brain coherence, about being a whole person, about health. And so that's the kind of people I bring on. The top 50 women in the world, there's a club. So I've had a lot of those doctors on, and we just talk about like how they survive their trauma, because all of them, they've survived their trauma, and that's why they're where they are. And
we've talked a lot about moms.
Uh-huh.
How dads reach out to you?
Yes, actually they do. There's some really top podcasters that we have gotten groups together, and we talk about what the experience is as a father as opposed to a mom, and how, you know, the father can kind of step in, even though he's in his grief, he can step in and kind of nurture that mom a little bit more and give her a little bit more grace, because if they both lost their child, that mom is feeling it through epigenetics, through DNA. She's feeling it in a little bit different way. So yeah, they've reached out, and there's another guy that lost his daughter that's a truck driver, and he likes to listen to my words of encouragement and stuff like that.
There was a recent study about what we might call heartbreak syndrome. Yeah. Men and women both are affected by it. Women typically are more often affected by it, but men are twice as likely to die.
They are.
Because of it. And so there's, you talk about the science of our hearts and our minds and how it affects our bodies, and certainly there's a lot to learn. Yeah. And a lot of work to do.
Yeah. And my marriage fell apart, and my whole family fell apart, and I become completely isolated. And I help people now so that they can learn to communicate with each other in a more compassionate way. They don't have to just one person walk out and leave everything on the other person or abandon each other emotionally. They can get help, and there is a way for them to heal together and be stronger than even before over that trauma bond that they have.
Tell me about the process of finding hope. It's one thing to start the grieving process and to work your way through it. At what point did hope start to be a word that you spoke and actually felt for yourself?
I think when I started riding my ATV, and that was a year after Cody died, because I knew in my heart Cody was still with me, and I had to keep going. And I said, that's gonna not only do for me, but it's gonna help other people know that there's hope. And so I've been really, really, really speaking strongly about that for probably the last 4 years now. There is hope. Don't ever give up. Never surrender. Hold strong to your faith.
Talk about seeking help and through the process that you went through to find help, and what you have recommended for others who have been through a tragedy like this.
The level of trauma that I went through, it wasn't just Cody's death. There was a lawsuit that was horrific that I investigated myself, 1,200 pictures of the scene. There was suicides over him. There was the loss of my marriage, the loss of my family. It was compounded grief constantly and trauma. So for me just to go to a regular counselor, they helped me in the beginning. A grief counselor, she helped me in the beginning, but then it got to be where I needed more than that. I needed to go to people that knew about neuroscience, these high-end psychologists and neurophysicians that could get my heart and my brain together. I went and trained at ashrams to learn how to do breathing. So I didn't take the traditional route. I got mentors like Tony Robbins, Forbes Riley. They showed me how to work through things in a strategic way, and that helped put my brain together. Dr. Joe Dispenza is another one that is very good about biohacking the brain and reconnecting those neural pathways. That
You know,
helped
a
me.
lot of people might think, I don't have access to those things. What do you recommend for people who feel like those options just aren't there for them, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that our medical resources are, not ample in New Mexico, and that the resources of New Mexicans in general may not afford the opportunity for that. Are there ways, and what are those ways that you would recommend that people who don't have the means find help that way?
Great question. There are ways. In the beginning, the Office of the Medical Investigator, they gave, I think, a full year of free counseling. Huge help. There's some compassion groups that you can get into, and they're free as well. I did have the means to pay for these high-end mentors, and now I know other people may not have that means, so we offer groups where you can come into our groups and listen if you need to, listen to some of the other coaches if you want to tell them what your problems are. They will help guide you through it. You can read our books. There's so many groups right now. Grieving Mamas, a friend of mine, Tanya Manley in Dallas, has Grieving Mamas, and Hope Rieger, and they're both authors. They do grief groups as well. Now Hope Rieger offers, it's called Grief to Hope, a 7-week course, and I think she does that maybe 5 or 6 times a year, and every week you go in and she's done the work on herself. You know, there's a lot of authors in there, we're all in there, and people can talk if they want, they can share, and we're there to help guide them and put them in contact with people that they need.
Well, people can follow you, One Mom's Memorial Ride or Ride with Victoria, on your website. And, you know, I just want to say that obviously it's such a tragic loss, and I know that it never goes away. And I want to say thank you for being here to share your story, to share Cody's story, and to share your own way forward. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for watching Fronteras, A Changing America here on KRWG Public Media. You can find this program on our YouTube channel, which you can access from our website, krwg.org, where you can also catch up on local, national, and international news anytime.